South Bay Workforce Investment Board is part of the California workforce system. There's 49 workforce boards in the state of California, and our particular organization manages an area in the South Bay area of Los Angeles, which is from Inglewood to Lomita, the city of Lomita, and we manage all the 11 cities in that area. And so a while ago, we were talking together. We had a regional business roundtable. We invited all the cities in our 11-city district, all the economic development directors, and all the chamber presidents, and we got everybody into a room, and we tried to figure out how we could work together as a region and how we could collaborate more. And a lot of different things came out of that meeting that were really important, and it was a good exercise just to do, because the participants realized that everybody was going through similar situations, and although there's a little bit of competition in between the cities, at the same time they recognize that when a large employer leaves the area, it affects everybody because people work at these large employers. And we want to do everything we can together to keep people here. So this website idea is not just business retention and attraction, it's also layoff aversion. So we decided to pull some things together into one location that everybody could use. And so some of the things that they were requesting at this meeting was a way to capture regional economic data and demographics on the region. They wanted to be able to have access to real estate data, because a lot of the cities were having a challenge of keeping track of the inventory in their cities. So a business likely, most often than not, would call the city and ask them for services, and they might say, we're thinking about expanding. What's available in the city? What do you know is coming up? And believe it or not, some of our economic development directors, to get some of that information, would actually have to drive around the city and take down addresses. They just didn't have a way to get it. And there's some things on the internet that are at no cost, that are not very comprehensive, and also loaded with advertising. So it wasn't really practical to use some of those sources. They needed a way to get the information on the real estate available in their city, both commercial, for sale, and for lease, and they needed to be able to print it out in presentation quality formats with no advertising on it. They also wanted this information as well, presentation quality reports for all the demographic information, and they wanted to have this information before the next budget cycle, when they were needing to make their presentations to their city councils. And then also they wanted this information available to them for their grant writing. Everybody is always trying to apply for grants, and a lot of the information that they have for those applications, they have to dig for it in a million places. The other big thing is that this package of real estate data and demographics, if each individual city were to buy it by themselves, it would be very expensive for them. So a lot of them, they just can't afford it. So we figured out that if we did it as a region, we could save on the costs, and then the Workforce Investment Board could put together the whole thing for them. And it's actually pretty cutting edge and unusual that a Workforce Investment Board would do this, but we decided that we put it in a category of business retention, layoff aversion, and because we called it that, we were able to get a grant from the state of California to help do it, because a lot of our competitors have this sort of business portal in their area. So we were lacking this, and we saw it as a way to bring the region together. And so far it's going pretty good, and we just launched it a few weeks ago.
That's great.
So,
It's really kind of like a
Brian,
digital.
you want to show them the real estate base?
I'm just going to say that it really is kind of like a digital face for all of these different locations in one place. that you, instead of having to get in your car and drive
Exactly.
around, you kind of take all that information and you make sure that it's as attractive as possible, that it's as user friendly as possible, and that it's downloadable.
And then in addition to the features, one of the main things we did was create a separate profile page for each of our 11 cities so that each city has its own identity and its own space with the information that is directly related to that city. So, and then on the screen you can see we have a way for the region. Each one of these cities are not so large, but as a region, we have a lot to offer. We have some of the largest Fortune 500 companies in the nation here.
I actually just wanted to
So
jump in for one
this is the
second,
city of Torrance.
Chris, just
Sure.
because what I really like about that is that you're still giving each of those cities a chance to shine. Like they can still identify themselves. They have their own catchphrases. They can have their own images, but they're still working together. So you really were able to find that balance in a really nice way.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, to that point, Chris, how did you come up with these catchphrases? Did you just get them from each city, and how
Yeah.
did they
Each
develop
city
them?
has their own tagline. Torrance is the balanced city. Redondo Beach is more to see. They all have their own branding.
Okay.
Uh,
And I'd also notice you have it very easy to have to locate and contact the key contacts with each city.
yeah. It's funny. This page is actually really basic, but to get all those contacts in one place is a challenge. It was, 3 or 4 or 5 different websites to pull all that together. So I have the mayor, I have the economic development director, and the chamber president all together. And that was one of the things that they wanted in this roundtable group, that the chamber and the cities wanted to work together more closely. And in a lot of cities, that doesn't happen. The chamber's doing their own thing. And with this website, it sort of pulls everybody together like we're one big team. And if a business is looking at Torrance, they can see, that all the contacts are in one place. And we also have some key links in that contact section too, and then all their social media links there as well.
I just
So
want to
you can
jump
get
in
it all.
one more time
Sure.
because again, I work on so many economic development websites and these contacts are so important to investors and site selectors, and yet so often it feels like a scavenger hunt to turn them to find them and pull them all together. So I really
Yeah.
admire how you were able to pull that all together and then again put links to the city, the chamber, tourism, all of that in one place.
And scroll down just a little further. You'll see the helpful links, things that businesses would want to know, and then there's social media links too.
Excellent, really
So
well
those are
done.
some of the things in our area. Yeah. And then go scroll back up a little bit. I want to show you the an area that we created of tabs right here. So one of the things in the first tab, business incentives, one of the things businesses always want to know is what business incentives do you have going on? And so what we try to do is pull together each city's unique incentives, and some of them are, you know, um, pretty common, but some cities actually have programs. And if you're a business, it's hard to figure out uh, the different assistance that is available to you. And so I try to put it together in one place here. And then we have in the next tab all the major employers in the city. And then the third tab is other information just about the city, like a city at a glance. And then different developments that are going on. So
Yeah, and I think the development section in particular is interesting because this is more futures, right? These are projects that
yeah,
are underway, not open for business yet, but that you're
right,
working on.
exactly. And we designed this site so that it was easy to change. This is just a WordPress site, and so we, all the text we can easily change. So when a city has a new announcement, we can easily add it real quickly.
Fair enough. And so I'm going to click on the commercial real estate, which we've been talking to, but not really showing up to this point. So
Right.
this is your implementation of our Zoom Prospector product. and it's initially showing up for the entire region. We can, in this case, I will just focus on Torrance since that's where we started. And you notice that some of the things, Chris, that you mentioned, like foreign trade zones, enterprise zones, redevelopment areas, and TIF areas, these are things that you can actually do a search on and find properties that meet those or qualify for those economic incentives. We can also do a search on various basic criteria like square footage. Is it a building for sale or for lease, or is it office, retail, or industrial space? And these customized further. And I don't know, Chris, if you've given thought to maybe adding subcategories of industrial space or retail space or office space, but that's something that you can do in the future very easily. So to your point about customizing the website, we make it just as easy to customize our software as the WordPress site does for the general website. So here I'm just showing just some properties here in the industrial space. Chris, maybe you could talk a little bit more about the need and the inventory problems that you have, or maybe not problems, but opportunities.
Well, one of the things I want to mention is that when you click on one of these properties, the user gets the contact information of the real estate broker, and usually that broker might have a brochure on the property. So there's a lot of information you can get if you're trying to create a presentation for your inquiring business. And another thing too is if there's a particular property you want to show them, you can develop a demographic search around that property, like 1 mile, 5 miles, and then you can export these different features into a PDF document and put it in your presentation.
And just to add to that, here we have a gallery photo, and in this case a single photo, but we could add different photos showing the interior of this particular property. But of particular interest here is the wordage under description. So notice how it has a very specific classification for this property and some aspects of the property that would be valuable or of interest to a specific business or site selector. They can actually do a keyword search either within Zoom Prospector up here, or they could simply do a search on our zoomprospector.com website, which we host on a national basis for site selectors and business people. And just to add to Chris's point about exporting, not only can you export into these different document formats, we can also email this directly to a site selector or business. We can also share it on social media, whether that's LinkedIn, Facebook, or other options. And then finally, on the left here, we can print this out and have someone zap this with their smartphone, and this barcode will have all this data in it. And just to expand on your point, Chris, about the demographics, here we're looking at specifically the labor force around this property. You've chosen to default to 10 miles, but you could have chosen 5 miles, 20 miles, or even a drive time analysis. And the user, as you can tell, can make those changes on the fly themselves. We also go into more detail on the demographics, and here you notice that we not only have the current year, but we project out 5 years. So people can get a very good overview not only of Torrance as it exists today in terms of the demographic breakdown, but we can look ahead 5 years and kind of get a little bit of a trend analysis going. This data, by the way, goes down to the census block group level, so it's very detailed, and it gets updated twice per year. So it's very fresh, much more update than the census. And just to round out this data set, we do also have consumer spending, which will be a factor, obviously, mostly for retail, but it'll also be important to businesses kind of trying to get a feel or understanding of how their potential labor force might be spending their money. We can go further than that, by the way. We can not only just say, well, here's some numbers and here's a nice pie chart. We can actually heat map out spending categories. In this case, I chose apparel as a whole. We can zoom in and redraw and recalculate those values. And we can do that just as readily for our labor force. So I picked an industrial site, so it would be logical that we'd want somebody in the manufacturing world. and I'll just pick this, machinery and equipment manufacturing, and we see there's a few hot spots here, and we can zoom in and recalculate those values a little bit. So it looks like this property does have a nice little area where a labor force is available. Now, these are people currently working in this space, so we can now also clear this layer and look at more you know, just to make up an example, for our business, we tend to have more people in their 20s. We want to train them, find people maybe with a graduate degree or just out of high school at least, and train them further. So we can ascertain whether or not there is a good population of those folks in this area. And it turns out there's a pretty decent labor pool to draw from in terms of at least the demographics.
The other thing you can use that for is if your inquiring business wants to locate their retail store in an area where there's a higher concentration of a certain age group, whether it be seniors or 30-somethings, you can use the heat map to figure out where in the city they're living, and it could help you decide where you might want to locate your business if it's maybe a retail location.
Yeah, and in fact, we can just change this and do a retail search. And I kept the heat map on, so immediately I see here's a nice little property here. We can take a closer look at it. And we're now looking at a Google Earth, Google Maps image, but we still have our heat map on, so our age category of 30-somethings looks like it's a good area for that.
Yeah.
Again, we have, in this case, not only photos, but we do have a brochure attached so that you can simply click on this and click on some more building photos. And we also have a nice little description within the text of the property profile.
Let's show them the community section for a second. Go to community and then torrents. So what we've been showing you is demographics related to the property and the area around the property. But if you just wanted the city itself, the entire city, you can go to communities, choose your city, and then you get the grand total numbers for that city. And so there's an infographic here. You can print that as a PDF. And then all the other things too would also be able to be printed out, like demographics, labor force, and that sort of thing.
And Chris, you mentioned early on in the webinar that one kind of major problem or concern that you had was you could pull some of this information from different sources and different websites for free, but you also had to deal with a lot of extraneous advertising and other kind of things intruding on that data.
Yeah, and plus the other no-cost sources are generally not complete either. So
with this, you have one kind of a one place where you can go and get a comprehensive profile of just the demographics, the business, what people spend money on. Here's the infrastructure, and you literally click on an icon that says export, and you have this nice branded with your brand report.
Yeah. Right. And as an alternative too, if you just wanted to take a piece of it for a report that you're doing, you could export it to Word or Excel, and then you could take out the chunk that you need rather than printing out the entire document as a PDF. But you don't have to click on that now, but all these things will be city-wide grand totals in this category. Yeah.
And I'm just going to backtrack and do a quick search, again, going back to industrial properties. I don't know why I'm necessarily fixated on industrial today, but I am. And just to show a couple other things, we do have wages data. This is more general. This is at the MSA level. We pull it from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but it does give employers and site selectors a good feel for what they can expect to pay for various categories of job. So it kind of rounds out that picture that we were looking at earlier with the labor force and demographics and even consumer spend. And then finally, we can actually map out all the businesses in a 1 mile radius, but we can change that if 1 mile is not enough. We can get a feel for just generally what businesses are in the area, and we can drill down to the actual business level. And this is data that we are getting updated 4 times a year. So each quarter this is updated, and you notice we have not only an estimate of employee headcount and revenue, we even have, in this case, a website that we can go to if we want to investigate this particular company more. And if we wanted to, we could analyze the labor force and all the other data that we've just shown you around this business as opposed to the property here that we're looking at. But one category that I like to show off to people when I'm showing this product is here. This is the place where we can do more custom searches for various businesses, whether it's just something with an employee headcount, a range of revenue, or even years in business, or if we know our NAICS codes, we can simply input that here. But there's a particular category here, professional, scientific, and technical services, where you essentially, with 1 click, or I guess 2 clicks, you get the entire support system for a new business or a business that's expanding into this area. So look at this cluster here. This category includes pretty much all the support that a company would need, whether it's landscape, architects, attorneys of various kinds, CPAs, various marketing-related services, whether it's advertising, mail advertising, photography, public relations. We can zoom in a little bit, and if we want, we could just kind of hunt and peck on these various dots here. And again, we've got a little overview of this company. Or again, we can just drill down into a tax services company here and find out about Liberty Tax. Go to their website. And this is all walking distance of this property we're looking at. Although again, we could take a look at the larger community simply by changing this radius from 1 mile to however many miles we want. Chris, did you want to add anything to this?
No, it's a good feature though to be able to look at businesses in a cluster. That's another feature I don't think maybe we talked about is some of our economic development directors, they like to do searches for like manufacturers or retail or some sort of industry, and then they call on those companies in that category. The chambers of commerce like doing that too when they're doing different outreach. We have another organization called the South Bay Council of Governments, and they do that as well. They target certain industries and then outreach to them. So this is a good tool for something like that if you want to target a certain industry.
Okay, there's actually a lot more that we could show, but I know we're kind of running up against the half-hour mark. So I will just mention that we showed you the community profile here, but we have, and I briefly showed the demographics, but we can also look at the community from the standpoint of demographics, businesses, as Chris mentioned. We could also even do a side-by-side comparison of Torrance against any other city in the U.S., and that will give you a side-by-side of the demographics, the labor force, and the consumer spending, and generate that as a report, which you can email to someone, or again, share it on social media. And then finally, of course, we have a mapping tool, which will be more showing, again, high-level demographic and other information. Also, different infrastructure aspects of the community, whether that's railroads, energy, airports, hospitals, secondary education. So again, it's basically all the tools that a site selector or any business person would need.
That's great.
And Lisa, I think we have maybe 3 minutes left in the webinar.
Yeah, exactly. So no, that's excellent. I did want to let people know that they can ask us about questions here. Any questions that you might have, you can certainly put them in the questions field on the right-hand side, and we will take a look at that. I wanted to start off with a couple questions. One is, are the widgets on the left-hand side, the mapping and compare, are those separate from the commercial real estate database?
Either or. If you were to subscribe to our Zoom Prospector product, you would get all 5 of these intelligence components, as we call them. Alternatively, if you decided that only some combination of these intelligence components would be what you need, we can simply have you deploy those as little separate modules within your website. And I'm more than happy to provide one-on-one web demos for anyone who's interested in learning more about that.
Great. Okay. And someone else wants to know about the data, where the data comes from.
So various data sets. The demographic, consumer spend, and labor force data is coming to us from a supplier called Applied Geographic Solutions. They are giving us updates twice per year, and they're pulling from various sources, including the American Survey, state and local government, or rather state and federal government sources. They also run their own algorithms to do the extrapolations that I showed you. So those projections out 5 years, there is a category in Zoom Prospector on retail potential. Those are kind of statistical magic that they're working on the data. The business data is coming from another company called InfoUSA, and they're, as I mentioned, giving us quarterly updates. And they, again, pull from various sources, and in addition, they have their own call centers that do rolling phone interviews with these businesses. So that's why you saw estimates for employee headcount and revenue, and that is down to the individual business level. So as opposed to, getting the aggregate employee headcount and revenue for a McDonald's, you actually would get the headcount and revenue for a specific McDonald's within Torrance.
Okay.
And then the other,
sorry.
Just to round out, the other data sources are just your Bureau of Labor statistics for wages, the infrastructure data we pull from various federal sources. In some cases, our clients have their own GIS data, and we're happy to incorporate that as well.
Right. Okay. So if you have your own local data, then absolutely that's something can be put in there. Now, one question that we have here is the demographic data available to the public, or is it available only to the city or other partners? And I can answer that kind of quickly by saying that absolutely what you see on this website is the public facing website. So all of this information is available to anyone who comes to visit your site. And although we often think about investors and local businesses and site selectors as being important website visitors, we know that a lot of our clients are happy to present this information to local media, to other kinds of community stakeholders who will find this really, really useful.
And Chris, you actually have some experience with that.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I used to be a former city councilman in the city of Redondo Beach, and so right now what I've been doing with this website is going around and giving demonstrations to all the city councils in our 11 city area, and to also the chambers. And we in the beginning thought about providing this information just to the cities and their staff, but when we figured out we could make it available to the public too, it just made it all the more valuable to us. So now it's a feature that can be marketed by the chambers on their website as well to their members.
That's great. And in fact,
Yeah.
part of it sounds like there was kind of a development process behind this website. And I guess this next question is, how long did it take you to develop this website, Chris?
The development took about 3 months, maybe a little bit longer. The longer part was figuring out how to pay for it. That took a little longer because we had to apply for a grant to get it, and the key to that was calling it a business retention layoff aversion website, and in that category, there's funds available to do things like this.
That's very good to know. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Brian, I've got a question for you here, which is, can drone flyover, interior fly-through, and or general videos be included on the site facility data sheets?
Not so much the data sheet, although I'm sure Chris could incorporate that in the larger website. What we could do is incorporate aerial views into Zoom Prospector as a GIS layer. And we do have clients such as, for example, the city of Poway, also in Southern California. They have aerial photos as a layer that you can load up. They also have parcel data, zoning data. So it's kind of the sky's the limit in terms of what you can include in terms of your custom data. But certainly drone aerial photos could be included.
Great. Okay. What do you suggest for board presentation timeframe technical overview? I guess this question works for both of you. I would just add myself that this is something that we often work with our clients to do, that to help them gather the materials that they'll need for that kind of presentation. We have, PowerPoints and all sorts of information that we can provide as well. But from your end, Chris, what would you
Well,
suggest?
what I try to do is about, I do it quickly, like 5 or 10 minutes, and I pick out 2 or 3 things and focus on that. So I'll start explaining why we did the presentation, why we created this, how we did it, how we got it funded, a little background on that. I talk about the home page and how it brings the region together, and then I pick one city out and explain their layout and 2 or 3 features that you can do that I think people are interested in, particularly the infographic, the real estate search, and then being able to print a few different things. And going through that, it's about 10 minutes.
Keep it short and sweet. I like that.
Yeah.
Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Nope.
Okay. So we have another question asking if Zoom Prospector is available in Canada.
I might want to let you answer that, Elisa, but of course the answer is yes.
As
And
the
in fact,
resident
we have some significant
Canadian.
deployments there.
Yes, exactly. As the Canadian on the GIS planning team, I can say yes, we do offer Zoom Prospector in Canada. In fact, we just relaunched a completely new redesigned version of the site. You could check it out at abbotsfordsitefinder.ca. You could take a look at it at Calgary Regional Development, Spruce Grove, Alberta, another example, Opportunity Newell. We've got a variety. We're in 4 different provinces at this point, soon to be more. And we're happy to talk to you. Costs, Brian, is another question about costs, whether it's in Canada or in the US. Do you want to speak to that?
So it would be, of course, a conversation best had one-on-one, but in general, we offer an annual subscription. We can commit to or have an agreement that it spans multiple years, and the subscription is all-inclusive, meaning it does include setup costs, training, any special GIS data that you want to include, new features, ongoing support, of course, and it's tiered by the population size. And again, you do have the option of either getting Zoom Prospector, in which case you get everything that we've shown, or you can simply opt to get 2 or 3 of the, or 5 of the intelligence components.
Okay, excellent. One more question that I have here, which, and I hope I understand this correctly. What does the community need to provide as part of the development of this kind of interactive web experience? I imagine this question means, like, what do the individual communities need to provide to this sort of regional collaborative experience? I'm not sure if I'm understanding that question correctly, but Chris, I'll hand this over to you to
Well,
answer.
one of the key things for us to move forward with this is to have our regional roundtable meeting, and we call together all the experts in this field of economic development in the chambers. And then so when we pitched the idea of creating this, I was able to point to all the people in our region that are the top experts in this topic and say, look, this is what they are saying we need. And then with that information, we typed up, an argument of why we need this, and we pointed to our competitors in other areas that have business portals, and then with that, we convinced the state to give us the money to do it. And it was a collaboration in that way. But as far as creating and building it, what I did is I took the comments from that one meeting and then created the site. And then now I'm going back around and asking people, what they'd like to add or remove or change, rather than trying to create a big site by committee. That would really be difficult. So we just created it. All the design is something we conceived ourselves, and then after that, the content can easily be changed. We made it so that the text and the photos can be swapped out easily. That way, it was a lot more practical, because with 11 cities, 11 chambers, 11 city councils, that would have been really hard to do a design with all that input. So we just got the big things that they wanted, and then made sure it included those things, and then now we're going back around and making sure everybody's got what they want being said on their page.
Also, the content's going to change over time. Just this
Yeah,
little video that pops up when you go to the website, that's going to change as new events happen,
right, right.
new breaking ground ceremonies take place.
Yeah, we want to keep it fresh, and so part of what we do at the Workforce Board is interact with all the communities at all their events. So we'll be taking photos and upgrading the content and keeping it current and fresh as time goes on. So yeah, that's part of it.
And in terms of our part of it, again, we're supplying the Zoom Prospector and intelligence component software. The implementation is pretty simple. You either redirect from your website to ours, or you embed as an iframe or as a widget. And I believe, Chris, you kind of opted more for the
Yeah,
embedding option.
right, right.
And we very often will partner with a web designer, as we did in this case. So you basically what you're seeing on this web page is the work of Chris and his web designer, and then
Right.
the Zoom Prospector and other software that we provide was customized to fit into the website in terms of the color schemes, the logos, and then of course the data that we provide, we simply update for you. So Chris and his IT person don't have to do anything in that regard.
Right, and your team helped us a lot with the integration and making sure it all functioned properly too. So we weren't just doing it on our own. There was a lot of collaboration between your company and ours.
Great. A couple of other questions. We've got so many questions here. That's wonderful. I just wanted to make sure we get to answer them. Is the Canadian
Sure.
data housed on Canadian soil? It's an issue with many agencies. We know that many municipal government agencies in Canada need the data to reside within the country, and the answer is yes. We use Environics in Canada. Environics is really the gold standard in data within Canada, and it's most of their data is based within from the Canadian census, but they're also doing projections on their own. And of course, many of our clients also add in their own GIS data. We have had clients come in and say, look, we have our own data, we don't need yours. And when they took a closer look at the incredible amount and depth of data we could offer them, they were very happy to take advantage of the data that we had to offer them. So the answer is yes, that is all Canadian data. We've got compliments from someone on the public-private partnership here, and they wanted to know, when did GIS planning get engaged in this in-house process? He says it's very remarkable.
In-house process.
Well, when did
actually,
GIS
Chris,
planning, I
you
guess,
reached out to me.
get brought on board with
Go
the
ahead.
website development, is what it sounds like.
Well, it was about we've been in contact with them for quite a while, but it wasn't until we got the grant funding that we formally engaged them. It was about June of 2015 that we formalized it, I think.
And I think, Chris, that maybe it was 3 or 4 months prior that you first reached out.
Right, that we were collaborating on how we would go about this and what it would take and what features we could use and include and all of that. Yeah, so.
And I think a lot of the upfront work, frankly, was just kind of conceptually understanding how you guys would best leverage the product so that when the grant came through, you were able to move ahead fairly quickly.
Right, right.
Great. Let's see if we have any other questions here. I think that we have probably answered them all. If anyone has any additional questions, you can always reach out to myself, A. Sklar at GIS Planning, to Brian, Bryan, at gisplanning.com.